Hey guys, it's Molton here and welcome back to another opening video, this time on the easy bishop b5 Sicilian. It's one of my absolute favorite anti-Sicilian lines I ever learned. It's filled with so many awesome traps that will hopefully catch your opponents off guard. Remember, if you enjoyed the content, please drop a like and do subscribe if you want to see more weekly chess content. And I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, the Sicilian line starts after 1e4 c5. We play the move knight to c3, knight c6, and then we immediately pin the knight with the move bishop to b5. And in this position, I'm going to split the video up into two main sections, one focusing on lines where black plays early knight d4, and then other lines where black allows us to take the knight on c6. In general, whenever black allows us to take the knight on c6, we will take the knight on c6. With exception of one line which involves black playing the move queen to b6. So the idea after queen b6 is that if we take the knight right away, then black is going to take back with the queen, not allowing the doubling of the pawns. After queen b6, we should answer with the move knight to f3, simply developing a piece. In this position, black has two main options. One is the move a6. After this, we can take the knight and then follow up with the move d4. After pawn takes, knight takes, queen c7, we can simply castles. Black plays e6. In this position, we've given up our bishop pair, but we have a comfortable lead in development, and I think white has a very comfortable position after the move rook to e1. If instead black plays the move knight to d4, we have a very strong response here, and it's the move knight takes d4, c takes d4, knight to d5. Indirectly defending the bishop on b5, since if black takes it, we can firmly fork with knight to c7 check. Here black doesn't have a very good retreat square for the queen, since if it goes to either c5 or a5, we can simply kick it out with the move b4. Therefore, the best response here is to play queen back to d8, and here white can follow up with a nice move, queen to h5, further creating some very strong threats against the black king. And here black only has one really good move, not to instantly lose, since all the obvious moves lose straight away. For example, if black plays the move e6, we can follow up with queen to e5 with our already completely winning position, since we're threatening knight c7 check, which can't be stopped. Here, if black tries to play the move f6, it doesn't work, since white can play queen takes e6 check, utilizing the pin of the bishop and king on e8. If black tries to play the move a6 here, then again we can play queen to e5. The very strong response. Black can't take the bishop because knight c7 check will win a queen. And if black tries to play the move f6 in this position, we can follow up with knight c7 check, and after king f7, queen to d5 check. Here black can try the move e6, but this doesn't work due to a very nice tactic. Knight takes e6. Again, utilizing another pin along the d file, and black has a completely lost position here. Therefore, the best response for black in this position is to play knight to f6. After this, if we go queen e5, they'll simply take our knight. Therefore, the best move is to trade off for the knight, forcing black to take back with the g-pawn. And here white has a very comfortable position, since black has these two doubled pawns on the f and d file, and white has no pawn structure disadvantage. Here, if your opponent plays the move e6, we can simply take the knight, play d3. In this position, I think black should hold off from playing d5, but I find a lot of players will play d5 very early. Here we can play f4. One game I played, my opponent played bishop d6 here to try and develop, and after knight f3, knight e7, both players castled. And in this sort of position where your opponent has the doubled c-pawns, as black you want to get rid of the pawns as quickly as possible, sometimes even having to sacrifice one of the c-pawns to do so in order to open up your bishops. As white, you want to blockade the pawns as quickly as possible with the move c4, and then try to gang up on the c5 pawn. So for example, here we can close the center with the move e5, After bishop c7, I played the move knight a4, immediately going for this pawn on c5. In the game, my opponent played bishop b6, which allows the move c4. And you see how this fixes the weakness, and black is unable to get rid of this c-pawn for the rest of the game. He played d4, which is a further inaccuracy, because now there's no way to save the c-pawn at all. We can simply gang up on it with b3. Play knight f5, queen e2, bishop d7, and we just follow up with the move knight to g5, maneuvering the knight into the e4 square. Queen e7, bishop a3. Eventually we'll win the c5 pawn and be a clear pawn up. If instead here black played the move c4, then we can simply follow up with, say, bishop e3. And in this position, if black tries to take the pawn, he managed to get rid of the double pawns, but in doing so he's given us a backward c pawn to target, and also we have a very nice square on c5 to put one of our pieces, either our bishop or our knight. A very pleasant position for white. Therefore, I believe that black should consider holding off from playing d5 and consider a move such as knight e7 instead. And after this, we'll play the same setup with f4, knight g6, knight f3. But the only difference here is that black's piece development is slightly more harmonious than if he was trying to develop the knight to f6 instead. One of the most popular moves in this position is to play g6 as black, after which we take the knight immediately, and black can take back with either pawn, but taking back with the d pawn is considered slightly more accurate. After d3, bishop g7, there are two main setups here for white, which you can consider. I'll show you both, starting with the one I prefer first, which is bishop to e3. After this, black can follow up with b6 to defend the c-pawn, and I quite like the move queen d2 here, simply making it a bit difficult for black to develop the knight on f6, since if he develops the knight on f6 too early, we can follow up with the move bishop to h6, immediately starting attack on the king side. If instead he plays the move e5, here we can choose how to develop our knight on g1, either to e2 or f3. For example, if we want to put our knight on f3, we can follow up with the move f4 here, and then next move we can play knight f3. If instead we want to develop the knight to g2, we can play a move such as h3, and after bishop e6, play knight e2, and follow up with the same plan of eventually either castling kingside or queenside, depending on what black does, and leaving option open of bishop h6, as well as looking to play the move f4 at some later point in the game. A second more popular option for white here is to play the move f4, since it allows for a setup which goes for an automatic kingside attack. After castles, black has many setups here, so instead we'll be focusing on exactly where to put our pieces on the white side. For example, one game in this position continued b6. White played the move king h1, a very useful sidestep to avoid checks on d4. Queen c7, and we want to remember this maneuver involving the sidestep of the queen to e1. The queen is heading for an aggressive outpost on h4, which will allow us to start our kingside attack. Black played knight h5, and then white played the move f5. One you should remember in this position, since it allows for the bishop on c1 to develop, usually to either h6 or g5. Black took, white played the move queen h4, knight f6, and here white can develop his bishop to h6, but instead plays the move e5, which is slightly more accurate. The knight goes to g4, and in this position white played bishop to f4, king h8, and already white is in a winning position after move h3, since the knight on g4 had no retreat squares. Black continued knight takes e5, but this allows white to finish the game with bishop takes e5, bishop takes e5, and knight g5, with an unstoppable mating threat on h7. So as you can see, this attack was fairly simple, but it can be extremely dangerous for black if he doesn't handle it correctly. So next we're going to be looking at the variations where black plays knight d4 instead. In the second section of the video, we'll be looking at the move knight d4, which features some of my favorite lines in this opening. After this, we can retreat the bishop to c4, and black has two main options, e6 and g6. After g6, we play the move knight f3, bishop g7, and we can take the knight on d4. Black will take back with the pawn, and then we can follow up with the move queen f3 instead of moving our knight, creating a counter attack on the pawn on f7. The best move for black here is to play knight to h6, defending the pawn, and after white plays knight e2, white has an absolutely fine position and can play on without any problems. Instead of knight h6, you'll find that most players will actually play the move e6 here, which looks natural at first, but runs into some nasty traps if black doesn't know about it. Here we can play the move knight to b5, threatening to play knight d6 check, so the best move for black is to play d6. And here black might think that he's doing okay, because he'll play a6 next move to kick the knight away, but he might be surprised to see the move queen to a3, attacking the d6 pawn, giving him a rather difficult choice of how to defend. I had this position 3 times in the exact same tournament. All 3 times my opponent improved their play. In the very first game, my opponent played bishop to e5, but this runs into the simple move c3. After pawn takes, we can simply play the move d4 with an absolutely crushing position already, since after pawn takes, bishop takes, the bishop has nowhere to go to keep defense of the d6 pawn. In another game, my opponent played the move bishop to f8, with the idea that after knight takes d4, he was going to respond with the move d5, creating a double attack on the queen and the bishop on c4. However, here he forgot about the move bishop b5 check. And after bishop d3, white played queen d3. So here white simply a pawn up and went on to win the game. Here the best move for black, but somewhat difficult to play, is the move king to e7, which is what my third opponent played. After this move, we should continue with c3, takes, black played a6, knight d4, queen c7, bishop d3, and knight f6, castles. So the resulting position is objectively fine for black, but it's very difficult to play with the king on e7. So I feel that in majority of practical games, white will have some advantage in this position, simply because it's not that easy for black here. One of the options I like most for black is to play the move e6 on move 4, since it's a good idea to always block out the bishop on c4 whenever it heads there in the Sicilian. Here my preferred move is knight g to e2, after which black has 2 main options which we'll look at, the first one being knight to f6. After this we can castle, and here there's a very nasty trap that black can fall into if he's not aware about it, and that's to play the very natural looking pawn to d5. After pawn to d5, white is actually winning by force after move pawn takes d5, and here white has a very nice move, and that's the move knight takes d5, sacrificing a piece temporarily to start a big attack on the black king. If black goes knight takes d5, we can follow up with knight takes d4, pawn takes, and then the move queen to h5, creating a double attack on d5 and also keeping an eye on the f7 square. Obviously black can't move the knight due to checkmate on f7, so the best move for black is to play bishop to e6. After this we follow up with the move rook to e1, creating a threat of rook takes e6 as well as bishop takes d5. Here already black is in quite a bit of trouble, and there's no real way to defend his material. For example, here one of the best moves is to play knight f6, after which we can follow up with the move rook takes e7, check. After bishop e7, White has a few options here, but the easiest one seems to be rook takes f6, pawn takes, and then queen takes f7, forcing the king to d7, and then simply playing the move d3. Here we're a full exchange down, but the black king on d7 is not going to survive for very long. We can continue our attack with bishop f4 and rook e1, with clearly a very dangerous attack. Therefore, instead of the move d5, black should prefer the move a6. And here we can play a3, b5, and drop our bishop back. If black, for example, plays bishop d7, we can simply take the knight on d4 and play knight e2. If bishop c5, we can follow up with c3. We have a perfectly fine position for white. If black takes the bishop, well, we can take back. Bishop b7. We have a perfectly playable position for both sides. Another popular option for black is a6 on move 5, avoiding a lot of tricks we saw in the previous line. However, since the knight is not on f6, we can simply take the knight on d4, forcing black to take back with the pawn, and play knight e2. Black can defend the pawn on d4 with bishop c5, and here I'm going to give you a simple plan as white to follow. We can follow up with d3. Let's say black plays knight e7. We want to castle. And our plan here is to push the f-pawn up the board to create some pressure on the black king side. We can do this by following up with knight g3. In the following game, black played the move king h8, and the game continued queen h5, attacking the bishop on c5. Black defended with queen to c7. White played the move bishop f4 to temporarily force black to play d6 or take the bishop. If he takes the bishop, then the d4 pawn might drop. Therefore, after d6, white dropped it back to d2. Black played bishop d7, and here white played the move a4, opening up some lines on the queen side. Knight g6. Here white took and decided to trade a pair of rooks. And now continue with the plan we mentioned earlier, and that's to play the move f4 here. Black played queen d8, allowing the pawn to go to f5, and after knight e5, white continued the pawn march with pawn to f6, with a very dangerous attack on the king side, and went on to win a very nice game. That's it for this video on one of my favorite anti-Sicilian lines. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll include a link in the description below to some sample games you can look through. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.